Sam, I know we say this often, but we may have a new contender for best day at work ever.
I know. Do you reckon that would work as the new Drive office in the future, mate?
You know what? I reckon given how nice it is out here, we could probably make it work. We'd find a way to make it work. We are out here in a beautiful part of the country. Sam, where are we going?
We're heading into the desert. I mean, we've already spent a couple of days on the road, right?
Yep.
And where we are now, we're kind of on the edge of the Flinders Ranges. It's quite amazing, but the journey kind of hasn't begun yet either, because we're heading into some seriously remote country, and we're going to have the opportunity to put this thing to the test as well.
So join us as we take you across the Simpson Desert in the Toyota LandCruiser, which is one of the most legendary four-wheel drives of all time.
This is not going to be your average road test. In this 5-part series, we're going to be taking the Toyota LandCruiser 300 series across the Simpson Desert, ticking off an adventure that is on the bucket list for many Australians. And in this video, we're going to be showing you the first 2,500 kilometres of that journey, of both bitumen and off-road tracks that leads us to the start of our desert adventure. Our journey started in Sydney and saw us travelling westward across the Great Dividing Range and through the New South Wales Central West towards Broken Hill. And from Broken Hill we continued westward even more towards South Australia, before turning northwards into what I would start calling proper outback country. We're doing this journey in a 2022 LandCruiser 300 series in GXL specifications. It's fitted with a handful of genuine accessories but is otherwise bone stock off the showroom floor. The LandCruiser GXL is priced from $101,790 before on-road costs. However, inclusions like a bull bar, bash plate, roof rack, tow bar and front recovery points will push that price a little bit higher. The 300 series LandCruiser is powered by a 3.3 litre twin turbocharged V6 diesel. This is a new engine for Toyota. It makes 227 kilowatts and 700 newton meters, running through a 10-speed automatic gearbox with full-time four-wheel drive, a locking centre differential and low-range transfer case.
The LandCruiser has a 110 litre fuel tank, 700 kilo payload in this GXL specification, a 3.5 tonne brake towing capacity, and our roof racks have a 70 kilo load capacity with this platform we have fitted, and that's perfect for some bulky swags and a couple of sets of max tracks.
Against a claimed fuel economy of 8.9 litres per 100 Ks, our loaded up vehicle will be using a little bit more fuel both on-road and off-road. We saw averages of around 12 litres per 100 Ks in this initial part of our journey towards the desert.
One of the great benefits of a road trip like this one is that you spend a lot of time behind the wheel. So of course, you get to know the vehicle that you're driving particularly well. We've obviously tested the new 300 series LandCruiser on road and off, but we are going to put it through its paces properly on this trip across the Simpson Desert. First though, we've already covered more than 2,000 kilometres since we left Sydney, all on sealed roads up to this point, and it's reinforced a lot of the things that we really like about the new 300 series. The ride is really well controlled and tied down. It's a little bit firmer than the 200 series used to be. Some of you might not like that, but I think it works well because that is what we're starting to expect of SUVs. So I think that works really well on sealed surfaces. The V6 engine that a lot of you had issues with because it was replacing a V8, I can tell you it's pretty punchy. If you need to overtake, if you need to accelerate quickly, this engine has plenty of power and torque, and the way it delivers it is particularly efficient. Part of that is the 10-speed gearbox. It really does help the engine do its best work. Now you will notice it shifting gear more because there's more gears. So if you've gone from a 200 series, which had a 6-speed auto, to this, which has got a 10-speed auto, you are going to notice it changing gears more often. However, when you get up to highway speed, it settles into a nice cruise, doesn't chop and change gears all the time, and it's really comfortable and relaxed. On road, as a long distance tourer, this is a particularly good large four-wheel drive, but as I said, we've got some pretty serious testing in mind, specifically off-road.
And along the way, there are plenty of opportunities to pull over, jump out, stretch your legs and spend a couple of dollars at the local roadside stores. Don't forget that a lot of these businesses have been struggling through the recent pandemic and they're all looking forward to welcoming travellers back to these special parts of Australia.
One place that is definitely worth visiting is Farina. This is a small, old ruined township on the side of the road here, just before you head into Maree. This dates back to the 1800s, and once upon a time, up to 300 people called this place home. It did go through a bit of a gradual decline now, but there is still a lot of evidence and beautiful old ruins here. And if you're lucky enough to be traveling through at the right time of the year, it is only open for 8 weeks of every year. You can come here and actually visit the operating bakery.
This unique bakery is open for business 8 weeks of the year and is operated entirely by volunteers who all give up their time to run the bakery as well as restore and preserve the surrounding ruins of the Farina township. We had a chance to check out the underground oven in action and speak to Steve, the project manager, as well as baker extraordinaire Kerry about this special project.
The volunteer project is an interesting one. It's a great model for a touring population. We have what you call grey nomads, right? But we're aged from late 40s to 85s, 6s and 7s. So the program started way back in 2007, 8. And there was a little working bee of a weekend. Then that went to a week as people found out about it. Then it went to a fortnight, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and now we're 8 weeks. And we have 200 volunteers. Look, Farina is the most remote underground bakery in Australia.
Yeah, one of the main reasons that the bakery's here, it's to raise funds to be able to help with the restoration program here, and the old building's been restored, and just to keep the place alive. It's a total different setting out here. It's just sunsets spectacular. You'll never see the same sunset. Sunrises are just out of this world.
And let me tell you, the pie here rates as one of the best I've ever had. And the fruit loaf was also amazing, making the perfect breakfast for future mornings. Before we get to the start of our own Simpson Desert adventure, we'll be taking on the Oodnadatta track, which is an iconic four-wheel drive journey in its own right. This runs up from Maree, past Lake Eyre and William Creek, through Oodnadatta and towards our final jump-off point for the Simpson Desert, which is the Mount Dare Hotel. Driving the Oodnadatta track is often a dusty, rough and corrugated experience. This time though, it is a little bit different. It is rough and corrugated in sections. You can probably see the bumps happening as you're watching this now, but there has been a lot of rain out here. So we've been contending with things like road closures, but we've also been contending with a lot of mud. These tracks are open only to four-wheel drive vehicles at the moment, and there are some sections that are really muddy. There's lots of water across the track. So it's made a bit of an interesting test for this 300 series LandCruiser. This is completely standard tyres, standard suspension, everything with a few accessories thrown on, and we are reasonably heavily loaded. Now what I've found so far, I'm locking the center differential. That's something that the 200 series had, the 300 series keeps it, and I think it's a fantastic thing to have in a full-time four-wheel drive. And I'm also using this multi-terrain select button here, so you press that and you swing your dial around. I've been using dirt and then flicking it over to mud when I'm getting into that sort of muddy stuff. And it just tailors up the traction control system nicely to help out with your throttle response and that sort of thing. It definitely works. This feels good through mud. There's a lot of response through the powertrain when you need it. And these tyres seem to be gripping reasonably well. We're definitely sliding around from time to time, but I think any car would. There's some pretty slippery conditions. And in terms of corrugations and roughness, the suspension seems to be handling things reasonably well. They've taken a few big hits so far. The bump stops are definitely getting a workout on the front, but I'm not experiencing too much fade or anything like that, and control remains to be pretty good. And although some do say that the 200 series rides better than the 300, I sort of agree with that a little bit. Because we're now loaded up a little bit, it's kind of softened the experience off somewhat. So this is riding very comfortably, and we're punching out some really big kilometers each day in this journey. And this is doing it in relative comfort and a little bit of style perhaps even. We are getting a few looks. I think this is one of the first 300 series LandCruisers to be driving around this way. So far, so good. We're still quite a long way from the start of our desert crossing, but we are right in the middle of some seriously remote country. This is rough, rugged and vast, and something you can only really truly appreciate after travelling through yourself. However, this is not a boring drive, far from it in fact. Things have a habit of popping up out of nowhere, like these desert art sculptures not far out of Maree. There's everything around here, from rusted old trains, wacky sculptures, and some incredible history to ponder. And of course, there is Katitanda Lake Eyre, Australia's largest lake at 9,500 kilometres squared. And sometimes this lake does fill with fresh water from a catchment of 1.14 million square kilometres. That is about the same size as Colombia, or nearly twice the size of Texas. This lake is also the lowest point on the Australian mainland at 15 metres below sea level in some places. But of course, the only true way to really get a sense of scale in this country is to charter a scenic flight of the area. These can be done from William Creek or Maree, and it is well worth the asking price. William Creek is another opportunity for refueling along the way, with a wonderful pub offering refreshments, food and accommodation.
If I had to give someone one piece of advice for travel like this, it's be flexible, because it doesn't matter how long you've planned a trip and how meticulous your plans may be, they can be thrown away very quickly by a bit of rain. And that's what happens to us at the moment. There's been 17 mils of rain up ahead, and where we want to get to, the edge of the desert, it's currently closed, and it might be closed for a little while. So we've got to sit down, have a look at the map, scratch our heads for a little bit, probably make some phone calls and figure out what we want to do. You can't really get cranky about it. This is just the way it is. And to be honest, for me, this is part of the adventure. Have some fun while you're doing it.
Next stop along the Oodnadatta track is the small remote township of Oodnadatta itself, and of course the famous Pink Roadhouse. And with a little bit of good luck on our side, after a short wait, we were greeted by open roads ahead towards Mount Dare, our final stop for fuel and supplies before heading into the Simpson Desert.
Well, after 2,500 kilometres, almost 2,600 kilometres, you might think that your journey is done, but really it's just the end of phase one, right? Because the real part of this off-road expedition is about to start.
That's right, that's right. The Simpson Desert starts actually about 60 kilometres that way. We've had a lot of fun getting here. I think we've been a little bit lucky with roads and closures. The cars are very muddy. It's been a good test so far, but like you said, the real adventure kind of starts now, which is really exciting.
That's right, mate. That is exactly where we're headed. So join us as we cross the Simpson Desert, one of Australia's most iconic four-wheel drive adventures.
Join us next time in part 2 of our journey into the Simpson Desert, where we discuss the kind of gear and equipment you will need if you want to take this journey on yourself. And later in the series, the LandCruiser 300 will get its first taste of Simpson Desert sand under its wheels, and we'll give you a bunch of tips on how to travel, sleep and eat on your own future adventures.